Welcome to episode 99 of the Gaming Persona Podcast. This is the show that explores who we become when we play games. I'm your host, Dr. Gameology, from Twitch and grad school classrooms across the country, and I'm joined by one of my best friends from my gaming journey, Gene Wong. So, Gene, how are you doing this week?
Uh, yeah, I don't know, not much to say, just doing good.
That is exactly the state that we want to be in when we're going to start a podcast episode. All right. Well, I have things to say, but before we do that, where can our listeners find us?
Uh, well, the Gaming Persona can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and most anywhere else podcasts can be found. If you are enjoying our content, be sure to leave a review on your favorite listening app.
All right. So, Gene, I'm going to go ahead and do the next line. We are going to be talking about the different kinds of gamers, but not archetypes, not player types. We're going to be talking about the most basic styles that you can come up with. Hardcore, casual, what's a mid-core gamer, and what do these different categories even mean for us talking about who we become when we play games? So, let's go into the ordinary world. So we can get into our daily lives with our video games. So, Gene, what have you been up to with video games since the last time we did this?
Um, I have dug further into Like a Dragon Ishin. It's been fun. It is a little bit janky because it is an updated PS3 game, so there's some annoying things from the fact that it's an older game, but it's been fun.
You know, it's interesting that you led off with that point because I was just playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on my PS5 right before dinner time. And I was getting like caught on every corner in this cave
Yes.
and like Geralt just swings his swords out into the middle of nowhere even though you're locked onto things.
Mhm.
And you can do that in a lot of games, but this was a very PS3 way of doing that.
Yeah.
If anyone knows what I mean. So I guess on the one hand, it's cool that we can play our favorite games from the past however we want now, but
Yeah.
it's also that, I mean, there's a cost. And the cost is we have to allow our minds to enjoy things that feel very old.
Yeah. I mean, this game, for reasons, they refused to bring it over to America back in the PS3 days. So people have been waiting for this game for like 15 years.
What were the reasons now that you're pretty deep into the game?
So this game in particular is a unlike the rest of the Yakuza games. The rest of the Yakuza games are like modern day. They're literally taking place like between 2005 and like 2019.
Okay.
Uh, this one is a spin-off that goes back to the 1800s. So I guess they were afraid that no one would understand anything about Japanese history and didn't bother.
Like Legends Arceus,
Yes.
the random game in the 1800s with an established Japanese franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. But, you know, out of a 10-point scale, where would you put Like a Dragon Ishin?
I would put it at an 8. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Mainly
solid.
yeah, it's not because it's still a very like as far as being in line with the series, it's a very solid entry. It's just got some annoyances.
Okay. I
Like
think every
the
game's allowed to have some annoyances, right?
yeah, like the item crafting in this game is like awful actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like yeah, you just gotta grind endlessly because the money you need to put into the crafting system is so much more than anything you need that you would earn just by playing the game. So this is a lot of just replaying missions to grind money.
Oh, okay. I can see that. So I'm gonna shift over to what I've been doing in games and see if we can meet in the middle. Everyone who's watching this on Twitch or on YouTube, I am wearing my wizard hat because I have been doing so many cool things in Final Fantasy 14. And I think, although I do miss streaming Elden Ring, and I'm still considering finishing the run that I'm on stream. I think that it's pretty clear that my game that I stream is Final Fantasy 14 online. And I've been doing a lot more writing to finish up the current manuscript for the data that we collected right at the Endwalker launch. And it's got my brain thinking about what's the next study going to be? What's the next instrument that I want to do? Do I need to do personality? Do I need to do a different approach to motivation? Do I want to be like all the people I have Zoom meetings with all the time and add something about gaming disorder to see if people play this game in a way that wrecks their lives or not? I've never done a study that measured that, but I could. And in a lot of ways, that could be a good thing to start the conversation. Because if anyone's going to have that conversation, Gene, the world is better off with me doing it than a lot of the people who are diving into that conversation.
Sure. I can
Be,
understand that.
it's sort of a situation where I think we've got it all wrong in terms of if you diagnose a gaming disorder, that makes it seem like all the things that are drawing in aggro on those consequences in your life originates from the video game,
Hmm.
because that's how we look at addiction. Like a person who is an alcoholic, the problems in their life are because they drink alcohol, but they are drinking alcohol because of the things in their life that are not going the right way.
Right.
And by treating the alcohol in a way like this drink is bad, you can accomplish some good stuff, but you're completely missing the point about all the sucky elements of their life that they just have to suck it up, buttercup.
Right.
And um, so there are safety issues too involved with alcohol that are not necessarily there with gaming disorder.
Hmm.
And I've just been thinking a lot about, okay, if gaming disorder can't be talked about the way we talk about addictions, then what is it? And the train has already left the station in a lot of ways, and I wish we could bring it back, recall it, and have us actually talk about how do people learn to be responsible people.
Hmm.
Like for me, and I know for you, we're both sitting here, we have good jobs and we played a ton of games together and a ton of games not together. And I don't think there's any point in time for me. I'm not going to speak for Eugene, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. But there's never been a point in my life where I fell short because of a video game.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part. I would say my senior year of high school, I it's not so much a video games problem. It's I just didn't care so much as anymore. So it was like I spent more time on video games than actually doing school stuff. But I was like, I don't care. I got scholarships and stuff. I'm enrolled in a school. I don't care. Yeah.
So would you say that as far as high school goes, you were casual, mid-core, or hardcore?
Uh, Hardcore for the first 3 years, and then dropped down to midcore senior year.
This new content sucks. I'm not savage mode rating senior year.
No, I mean, I like my senior year was literally two band classes, a chorus class, and my final elective. So I was just hanging out all day.
Wow. If they had Steam decks back then, you probably would have found a closet and just be playing Like a Dragon Ishin on it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. Yeah, so my senior year was not like that. I'm pretty sure I earned like 31 college credits in my senior year.
Mm.
I was applying myself, but I know for a fact that when The Lord of the Rings Return of the King came out for PS2, I beat that whole game on the night I bought it.
Wow.
I couldn't stop. I couldn't believe you could play as Frodo and Sam. Gandalf was amazing. Aragorn was amazing. That is one of the best games I've ever played. Oh man, and I think that's the first mention of that game in the history of the gaming persona. So let's get into our topic for the week: casual, midcore, and hardcore gaming. This is our call to adventure. All right, so Gene, there are three types of gamers according to this report by Quantic Foundry, and many peer reviewed publications use this same ideology to come up with their bar graphs and line graphs. And that's really important because even if you define them differently, you would assume people hear these labels and have a general idea of what they mean and that they mean the same thing.
Mhm.
So let's just pass it back and forth, Gene. Can you read for us the definition in our show notes of a casual gamer?
All right. Yeah, a casual gamer is someone that dabbles in games, plays short sessions, and most likely infrequently.
All right, I will take core, mid-core gamer. I regularly play video games, but am not super serious or competitive. And
And then
Gene, you
hardcore
get,
gamer, yeah,
yeah.
you, you have high-end equipment and play seriously or competitively.
All right. So, wow. I don't know if Jenny would appreciate me characterizing her this way, but I feel like the setup for our show when all three of us are here is that we're bringing these perspectives into the episode. Except maybe I lean a little bit into hardcore, but like hardcore when you don't have a team to raid with,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm a wannabe hardcore, which results in me being mid-core. Jenny's definitely casual, and Gene, you beat like you're gonna beat Resident Evil 4 when it comes out in a couple weeks without firing a single bullet. I know
Nah, I don't think that's possible in that game, mainly because of those bosses that you can't knife.
it. You'll find a way. All
But
right.
like, yeah, I think that's right now I'm somewhere in between mid and hardcore. Like right now, I'm not hardcore because I'm not like raiding in an MMO or anything like that.
Would you like to, Gene?
It's still in the air because my life is still currently busy. But
Oh, you can still raid in a game even though you're busy. Okay, so I just want to kind of roll back a little bit about why I'm wearing the hat because it kind of fits into this question and I want everyone to know. So I'm wearing my wizard hat because I found out how to create more characters in Final Fantasy XIV for the main server I play on. I've been trying to create a second character for weeks and it wouldn't let me. But that's because if the server is congested with high activity, you can't create a new character. But if you play in the morning, you can. And I just thought you couldn't, period. So someone told me on Sunday you could do this. So then there was a patch in Final Fantasy XIV, and I wanted to make my Bunny Girl character from a different server and make a copy of her on my home server where I play with AIE. So I did that. And then I thought, well, I would also like to have a male character, and so then I wanted to make a different species, not human, because I've had a human male character before, and I had no motivation to play as him. I even quit the game after 3 months of playing the game. I was new to the game, and that character, I just didn't care. I fell out of the story, and oh wow, we have stream alerts on our uh podcast screen. Thank you, Kuro Otome, for the follow. I know who that is. That's never happened before with an alert during the podcast. I'll have to think
Cool.
about if I'm keeping that in or not. Um, but all the follows are appreciated. You're helping our influence grow. Now, back to the character creation story. So now I have this project to screen record with no voiceover the cutscenes of A Realm Reborn with different characters so that I can use them in psychological explainer videos about who we become when we play games. So, all that to say that I have really been connecting with the bard side of playing games. I just want an amazing story to experience. And it's because on Tuesday nights, I stream, but I don't have a raid team. And all the people who group up with me for content are on this raid team. So I have no choice but to be casual on Tuesdays. So I was practicing my DM skills and using voices for the characters, Gene, in the
All right.
in the unvoiced cutscenes. And there is a black mage Lalafell at the very beginning of A Realm Reborn story, and I did my best to give him an Undertaker voice, and it was amazing. So
Okay.
I found out a lot of things about myself as a game player, that I can play hardcore, I can play midcore, and I found a way through my newly found D&D skills to enjoy casual gaming too.
Have you heard the voice or the Japanese voice of Yu Yu Hase?
No, I haven't.
He is the most manly man of all time. Let me show you. Here,
Wait,
I'll
what
link you
does
a
that
clip.
even mean?
His voice is like epically deep.
Okay. Well, I can imagine it, but because of all the technology going on my screens, I don't think I should watch it right now.
Oh, okay.
The the stream will crash. And episode 99 will be over. But I did put a poll out on Twitter right before this episode to get an idea from the people who follow me and listen to the show what it is everybody looks like in terms of the type of player they think they are. And right now, 57% say they are core, mid-core gamers. 28% say hardcore. 14% say casual. And nobody picked the sarcastic fun option, which is this question even necessary? So no one has a sense of humor tonight. So there's that. Is there anything else that we need to talk about in the call to adventure? I don't know. So I do have a question for Eugene. In old school psychological research on gaming, it was just casual and hardcore. So what do you think the idea of a core mid-core gamer does to this whole thought process of casual hardcore gaming?
Say it's a person that just plays games because they are interested in the game. Like, I know there's a lot of people that only play sports games. They play like FIFA or a Madden game or
NBA 2K.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
are interested in the game. They're not like, they may not necessarily be playing league challenges all day long. They just like basketball or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a way to take their hobby into their living room when they're not outside doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know what? I'm going to just say this. My first roommate was an amazing basketball player in college. My first roommate in college. Amazing basketball player. And every game that I saw him do, he was easily the most prolific scorer on the court. We're not Division 1 NCAA or anything, but he was very good. And I played one game of those like original NBA 2K, like the first or second year that they did 2K instead of just NBA Live, right?
Mm.
At the end of the first quarter of that game, he was beating me like 48-4.
Wow.
I was trash, but he was getting alley oops on every possession and just dunking on me. I couldn't even figure out how to guard him.
Mm.
And so there's just something to be said there that he was so into basketball that he would have destroyed me on a real court and it would have been worse than in NBA 2K. But then we're playing a video game where you would think that I have a chance to play a game against him, right? No. No, I don't. Because his knowledge of basketball somehow translated into NBA 2K.
Mhm.
So, yeah, like okay, so core mid-core gamers are interested in the specific thing they're playing, but not necessarily trying to make gaming a central part of their identity.
Probably. Yeah, like there's a lot of people that just play games that are, that are interesting when they come out. Like I'm sure there's plenty of people that will buy Resident Evil 4 remake who have probably never played in Resident Evil before, but it's just here's the cool new zombie shooting game.
Yeah, because they saw the show on Netflix last summer and they're like, oh man,
Yeah.
this is
And
my jam. Too bad Netflix didn't agree. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next section, the road of trials, where we face our challenges and discover our strengths. All right, Gene, one of my favorite websites that exists besides drgamology.com is quanticfoundry.com, which is run by Nick Yee, good friend of our show, very first guest we ever had. And he had a report about 4 years ago, I want to say. No, it's actually 5 years ago, 2018, that talked about these gaming distinctions. And we were already thinking all week about talking casual hardcore gaming. What is it? Does it matter? Well, there's some really interesting statistical charts in this report.
Yeah.
And I would like to talk with you about some of them and see what happens. So, this first one has so many stats because there's three different types of players and there's at least 10 gaming motivations. And we've covered the gaming motivations on the show a few times. And I guess we can do a little bit of a refresher as we're talking about it. But let's just, I want to ask you what your first thing that you see. The idea here is we're looking at gaming motivations and how strong they are
Okay.
based on what gamer category you fit into.
So before that, even I noticed that the breakdown of the people that took the survey, only 10% of people counted themselves as casual, which we've had this discussion before. A lot of people in that casual category probably had to be goaded into even calling themselves a gamer.
Yeah, I actually have no idea how Quantic Foundry gets them to do the survey unless they do targeted emails to people who are not necessarily using their website just to get the casual perspective.
Right. Because I know people that will like play like I don't like a mobile game, like a Candy Crush or a Wordle, and they don't count themselves as gamers. But it's like you are actively playing a game like every day.
Wordle is such a video game. Plus, the whole streak concept is such a motivating factor to coerce people into playing when maybe they weren't planning on it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just something I thought was interesting. In that 10% of people, a lot of people may not even count themselves as gamers, and they're like, "This is the category that fits me, I guess."
Right. But also, if you look at the people who identified as casual, they are only 27% interested in playing a challenge activity.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, going to the chart at hand, like casual gamers generally don't care about pretty much any aspect of the game they're playing. Like, well, I won't say they don't care, but it's very unimportant to most of them. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna make a promise. I will explore possibilities for putting a bar graph like this in the website post for this episode. I don't know if I'll be able to because it's not my data, but you can. I can definitely include a link to this report so people can click over and see it. There is a 50% line across the bar graphs, and it shows in a very interesting way which categories and which color codes are positively above 50% and which ones are below 50%. So even if you don't look at the numbers, you instantly see all the blue color, which is the casual game category, below 50%. Like there
Yeah.
is nothing about gaming that they love more than 50%. Now, as a teacher, I have to grade a lot of things. I know, big surprise. Everyone who's listening to our show, Doc has to grade papers. All right. If I were to grade something at a 50%, I would hear about it the next day. Like that number would draw rage aggro at me through my inbox. So that is a very tough number. And we're saying nothing is higher than that.
Hmm.
The most interesting thing to a casual gamer, according to this chart, is fantasy. And that's only 44% interesting.
Right.
All right. So we have a question. We have a couple questions. So if you're bad at playing video games, does that count as gaming disorder? Uh, uh that's funny. I like that. What else? All right, so like my son playing Halo, the last time we played, the score was something like 44-5. Wow. Okay, so that goes right along with the question of if I'm bad at video games, does that count as game? Oh, I'm just kidding. Oh, that was harsh. Thank you for watching the show. I should be a nicer human being. And does the difference in perspective skew the surveys? Yes, I think absolutely it does. Let's talk about that, Gene. In our pre show, I mentioned that I was going to go here, and
Well,
the
I
Twitch
also
chat.
think
Yeah, go ahead.
that based on the way this chart has resulted, if you do value some of these things more highly than these people, you probably aren't a casual gamer. You might
Oh,
think you're a casual gamer, but you might not be.
that's an interesting idea as well. So, when I have done surveys through Quantic Foundry, they are frequently 5 point and 7 point Likert scale questions, meaning the highest score is extremely interested, very motivated. The middle of the line answer, which is the three or the four, that's neither interested or disinterested. And then the one and the two is not interested at all. Okay. Or not interested. So if you have a person scoring a 40% on a motivation, that means when they like it, they're definitely not saying very interested or very motivated or extremely motivated. They're saying, I'm interested. And that means the things that they don't like, they're probably saying, I really don't like that. So what happens is you get lots of ones and twos on a 5 point scale. And the most positive you're going to get is four. You're never going to do a five. And so if you're living in that middle of the Likert scale is just five choices and they're ranked in order, right?
Mm.
So what we're seeing here is when we talk about the hardcore scores, they were more likely to say extreme and positive things. Whereas the casual gamers were more likely to say extreme negative things, and the core players were more likely to be indifferent, like in the middle. So every good response was balanced out by a bad response somewhere. So the motivation categories, for example, are community, competition, excitement, destruction, completion, power, strategy, challenge, fantasy, story, discovery, and design. Right, and all three categories scored themselves in each of those ways. So what do you see that really stands out, Gene, about the hardcore crowd?
Uh, well, yeah, like you said, they probably rated certain things on the high end, things like community, competition, and challenge and excitement. Um, you know, they're more likely to express that those things matter to them than not, I guess, is the takeaway.
Absolutely. Now there's a method to my madness, and I'm going to bring it into light here. I usually don't talk a lot about gaming disorder or about that side of the research, at least not every episode of this show. But you see on competition and challenge, those are the highest scores for hardcore gamers. And if you just look at those as numbers, you might get confused and think those are the people that have gaming disorder. And actually, the way the world works, I think that's what a lot of researchers and clinicians may be inclined to think if they don't listen to talks like this, hang out with the geek therapy crowd, go to panels, and see what passion for video games looks like. Gene, why do you think things like community and competition and excitement and challenge matter so much to hardcore gamers?
Well, okay. So one thing about hardcore gamers is that they congregate to other hardcore gamers. Like you don't go become number one raid group by yourself, right? You have
Right.
to find the community. And
Yep.
if you're not excited about being in that community, well then you're just a boring member of the raid group. And
You
then if
know
you're not there
what?
for the challenge, then why are you in the raid group?
I am only using this comparison as a symbolic parallel. All right. But if you go to some kind of social gathering, like a church or a club, and you are like, I don't want to be here. And then people ask you how you're doing, and you're like, I am so disappointed that I'm here. I would rather be anywhere else. You're not going to have anyone to sit with, right?
Mhm.
And you're not going to remember, you're not going to retain information, and you're not going to find any benefit to adding that to your day. All right. In video games, we have to make ourselves socially appealing so that people will group up with us and so that we can make what looks like friendship in a video game. And sometimes that friendship is something that will only last for 20 minutes,
Mhm.
right? And actually, I have a story. Can we segue into my story in Final Fantasy, Gene?
Sure.
All right. I was playing White Mage in a normal raid on Sunday night with our friend Jessica. Jessica's been on one episode of the show. She did great. And I play a lot of Final Fantasy 14 with her. She has mentor status in both crafting and battling. It's crazy. She's become so good at the game. And I was playing White Mage. I was keeping her alive. She was my tank. I was her healer. It was synergy, right? And I was
Mhm.
it we were rocking. Like we were going through the bosses. Nobody was dying. It was great. And then she said, "Imagine using Cure 1 in endgame content. And she said this about me because I use Cure One in endgame content. I didn't
Okay.
know. I didn't know that using that move is a mark that I don't understand my class. Because you know what? I'm not wearing a white mage hat, Gene. I'm wearing a black mage hat. But they needed
Uh-huh.
a healer, so I played healer. And and she completely broke my confidence in the class. I did an expert roulette this morning and I died 10 times in 25 minutes
Wow,
playing white mage. It
that's
was
actually
by
impressive.
it was the worst dungeon I have ever run. She gave me a case of the yips if we are talking sports terminology here. And all because what she was saying is you have more powerful spells than that are quicker, that give you other moves to do that are off cooldown. You could be so much more efficient at White Mage. So what she said, although it sounds like she was shaming me, because she didn't mean to. She was just trying to tell me that you're a level 90 White Mage and you're playing moves like you're a level 50, which is a fair criticism, but it shattered my confidence. And
Mhm.
now I have to figure out who am I if I can't play white mage. Thanks for listening to my story, Gene. What should I do?
Play Scholar instead.
Oh man, I've never even played a single thing as Scholar, but I do have a level 90 summoner. So the question is it safe for me to play level 90 Scholar when I've never played a second of Scholar?
Uh, well, my experience of Scholar is very dated now because I haven't played in a couple
You
years.
would play like a level 50 Scholar too.
Yeah, but Scholar in the day was the superior healer for learning, I would say,
Yeah.
just because less could go wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Scholar Shar says Scholar is still the superior hero because the way you play that game, the way Scholar plays, has a lot of built-in fail safes. Like, cause like what's that summoner ability? I forget what it's called. The one
Where
where you
you,
shoot like a needle and you recover MP.
yeah.
Uh,
I
like
don't remember what it's called. I don't remember the names of my spells. It's bad.
yeah, but like and with White Mage, you could just bleed yourself dry if you don't manage your MP right. But with Scholar, you have you have that fallback safety. If you run low on MP, shoot someone a needle, gain like half your MP
Yeah.
back.
It may have been mana drain.
Yeah, but like
So,
so yeah, and a lot of your healing is done by shooting a bubble shield at them. So you can also run around and dodge AoEs in a more reasonable fashion because they can take a hit with their shield while you dodge.
yeah. So, Gene, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is I really would like to eventually create a second podcast that is all about Final Fantasy 14, but in a very gaming persona or gamer's journey kind of way.
Hmm.
So I've been thinking a lot about that, especially since I'm playing through A Realm Reborn. We actually have a really good question in the Twitch chat that passed me by. It's from Kuro Otome, our new follower. I consider myself a casual gamer when others consider me a moderate gamer. So mid-core, according to this conversation. How does my perspective versus other perspective feed into my gamer identity too? That's a really good question. So I think the most important information in that question is right there staring at us in the face. The conversation of who we are when we play games has to start with how we see ourselves. And if there's something about being a casual gamer that's really appealing to you and you feel like you experience that, then other people don't get to take that away from you. Even if what they are saying as evidence for their point of view on you is objectively true, it's not objectively true in the way that you're interpreting your own self identity.
Yeah. And I kind of brushed on it a little earlier, but I feel like the breadth of what constitutes casual gamer might be enormous. Like, does a person that goes to Dave and Buster's like twice a year count themselves as a casual gamer?
I don't know. Is it a Monday night and they're just sitting there watching Monday Night Raw?
Possibly. But like, yeah, if that is person counts themselves as a casual gamer, yeah, of course none of these categories matter to them. They're there to play skee ball and like, I don't know, the Spider-Man game that win tickets. Like
Okay, that's more of a gambling activity than it is video games. And I hate to be that guy, but skee ball is not a video game.
probably true, but I'm just saying, like the Spider-Man game is a video game, but you know, it's a
Wait,
gambling game because you're there for tickets.
I'm going to
But
date myself here, Gene, but is it okay for me to admit to you that I completely missed the grand prize game?
I guess so.
Yeah. Oh man, Bozo was such an important part of my childhood. I feel like that's probably creepy to admit. Let's get back to video games. So,
But yeah, I was just saying, like the bottom of casual gaming could be so far beneath what we consider ourselves casual that basically anyone by comparison is a core gamer.
yeah, I actually was thinking when we were getting ready for the show, it might be worth talking about does this even matter anymore? Because think about it. We're all carrying games in our pocket and games that are more technologically advanced than what people who are gamers from the 90s were playing.
Hmm.
You know, one of my favorite video games of all time that has done so much for me, Journey, by that game company, it's on my iPhone. They converted it to an iPhone app, Gene.
Yeah,
You can
that's pretty
play it
amazing.
on Steam. You can play it on Xbox and PlayStation. I'm pretty sure they have it on Switch too. You know, there's no screen in this world that cannot play Journey. I'm sure kids are playing Journey on their graphing calculators. I don't know how, but I just want to imagine that they can.
Hmm.
And so if you can play a game anywhere, then it takes less connection with the identity of being a gamer to add that to a part of your day.
Yeah.
You know, like we're always looking at our screens for better or worse. It's probably not a good thing, but just driving home today, I saw a mom rolling a stroller down the sidewalk. I'm assuming there was a baby in it, and she's not looking up at all. She's walking with her right hand out, face glued to her screen, probably not playing a game, probably more of a social media or scrolling through music or something. But it doesn't take hardcore music listener to be walking down the sidewalk with your baby stroller that way. Do you get what I'm saying there?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Like,
like yeah, so I'll give you an example. Like my freshman year of college, economics 101. It was a big class, like 300 people. We were in like a big auditorium.
oh yeah.
One of the requirements of that class was you bought this buzzer basically, and you would answer questions in class with that buzzer, and it would get you extra credit. Everyone by default in that class was playing a game.
Oh
Like
yeah,
people don't
that's the same technology as the old Who Wants to Be a Millionaire
right.
attraction that was at Hollywood Studios for Disney.
Right. So it's like a lot of people probably don't associate that they were playing a game, but you definitely were. That
Oh
was
my
hard to
gosh,
grade.
Gene, do you remember the college times when we would play Buzz in my
What a
living
game.
room? Oh, that
Yes.
was such a good game. I wish it still existed. We're getting a really good list for our library of games for this episode.
Yeah. But yeah, like I'm just saying, there's these game activities everywhere, and most people probably don't count themselves as playing a game. And
Yeah,
so,
because that would make them childish and uncool and irresponsible.
right.
That's one of the things. I took a research survey recently, and I just pointed that out with a lot of their questions. I was like, the foundation of this question assumes that playing a video game is irresponsible and childlike. And the problem is, in early childhood development, you are not responsible for things and you are supposed to be childlike. So, a lot of the questions about like how does this help to diagnose gaming disorder in 6 to 10-year-olds? I was like, it shouldn't. Dear God, it should not. Okay, so then 11 to 16-year-olds. And I still have kind of the same point of view on that. And I really don't think that it's fair to take this idea. It's this idea that from the time we were born, our only purpose is to get a job and work and make someone else money out of our productivity.
Hmm.
And video games are an obstacle for that. And so we need to demonize it.
Hmm.
That's how I'm starting to feel about this. And I wish I played enough at this point in my life to say I'm a hardcore gamer, because what has happened is I'm a hardcore worker, and I
Right.
quite frankly hate it more days
Uh-huh.
than I love it.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
That's
like
definitely why I'm not currently rating Final Fantasy 14.
well, you wouldn't have to do savage raids if you came back and played with me. There's like casual stuff. We could just go. Oh man, our chat, the the suck core gamer. That is you need to trademark that before people swoop in that have the same last initial as you and start putting it on shirts. Um, GG. So I want to talk about one more chart. I think we have time to do this. There's a few other charts that are really interesting, but the second half of this report brings in gender as a determining factor of what motivates people to play games. So it's less so a conversation on these charts about being hardcore, midcore, or casual, but it's about what happens if instead of investment in the gaming activity, we look at investment in the motivation separated by gender. So let's look at the one that has some positive percentages to talk about, Gene.
Okay.
All right, competition. Males are so
It's
much more competitive. Statistically speaking, those bar
yeah.
charts are not close to the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that several categories are super close together despite the gender difference.
That's true
Yeah,
too.
like I find it interesting that despite being way more competitive for males, the power part is basically even 60% versus 61%. So
I
it's
don't
like,
I don't want to characterize it as female gamers being less competitive. I think it's less interest in being competitive.
yeah, that's probably true.
So it's 76% for male in interest level, 63% for female. But I think that 63% for female would totally own some of that 76% and draw some gamer rage, because that's stereotypical and I can just imagine it happening.
Well, I also think it's a matter of genre, right? Like the most competitive games are very gender unbalanced. So games like MMOs like 14, yeah, it's equal gender because anyone can be anything. But
Yeah.
like certain games, like the Call of Duties out there, they're very the Halos. It's very much like, hey, you are Master Chief, you are a man. This is what you do. So
Yeah.
it attracts a different audience.
You think so? Do you think that the gender of the character you play attracts a different audience?
I would think so, just because. Okay, so I mean, the internet is of course not indicative of reality, but there are
Hear that,
many
internet? Take that.
there are many people out there that would say, you know, this dude is not handsome. I'm not interested in playing this character.
That's definitely the first thing I think about, Gene.
But like that's like I'm just saying, if you have an ugly man that is displeasing to the eye, that's turning away both male and female players, I'm sure.
Gene, what if this is why I didn't like Resident Evil 7 or 8? Because I didn't know how attractive Ethan was.
There are definitely a million, not million, but there's definitely a greater appreciation for the buff, mature Chris Redfield over Ethan, the everyman bland dude that no one even knows his face.
And then, what about the preference for super buff steroid Chris Redfield from the BSAA versus the shrimpy one that has a face that's not quite Chris Redfield in Village and 7?
Yeah, but yeah, there is definitely a lot of what's the word? So I saw a post a while back that says like basically the fate of the most popular characters in Capcom franchises is to become basically a thirsty like there's a thirsty dad. so uh Dante and Devil May Cry 5.
Oh
He is
man, so good.
now Chris Redfield. Who else? I forgot who else was in this chart. But like so apparently that is a motivation for some people to play these games though, to see how their favorite characters has become a thirsty dad.
I was actually thinking about Dante for a different reason earlier today. I was thinking about how he is not too above his own physiology to admit that he's tired or to sarcastically embrace the fact that these fights are ludicrous and I'd rather not be doing it right now. And I just think that's such a cool thing for a video game character to demonstrate. And I was thinking about it actually because I've been doing my elliptical and my VR workouts every day for half a week. I wanted to see what it would feel like to do 2 workouts a day, and drink 2 of these water bottles every day, just to see how I feel. And and today I was feeling a little bit of extra pressure or like soreness in my ankle from the elliptical machine. I'm not used to using it every day yet. And I was just thinking, for some reason, I was thinking about video games. I was thinking about who's going to be my character of the week for the gamer's journey. And in that book, I do talk a lot about Dante and Nero and Virgil. They're very important characters to me, and I think they have a place in the story of gaming mythology because they bring the angels and demons aspect to video games in a really compelling way. Anyway, so I was just thinking, Dante would just say like, "Oh, my ankle's sore. I don't feel like doing this fight, Nero. You take it." and so I was making my morning coffee, and I had that thought about Dante. So
Yeah, but he's gonna instead, while Nero is doing the fight, he's gonna go somewhere else and actually advance the plot.
oh, burn. I actually think there's another interesting thing about Capcom. We have some of the Street Fighter 6 characters getting revealed, and so a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
them have new
that was another one.
outfits.
I just remember now. Ryu
Ryu,
of Street
yeah.
Fighter 5 and 6. They're like, yeah, he's another sexy daddy character now.
Oh yeah, he is not the same Ryu that you convinced me to just main him 15 years ago so that I could be good with one character.
Yes.
Yeah, no. But actually, back to Resident Evil really quick. I find it really confusing what they're doing with the character models in that franchise because they very much changed Chris and Jill in the most recent games that we've seen them. Like facial design, right? Maybe it's the motion capture people and they modeled the character more after the person who's mocapping them now.
Mhm.
But for some reason, we can't mess with Leon S. Kennedy and Ashley. They must look like 4K high res versions of those GameCube characters.
Hmm.
So I
I
wonder what it is about Leon.
Well, I think it's maybe not so much Leon, but so much the ideal of Resident Evil 4. Like Resident Evil 4 is considered by a lot of people like, I don't know, the greatest game ever made. And some
Yeah,
people, I think they would risk a lot of people just not buying the remake if they did anything with
but you don't
any of
think that they. I felt weird the first week after they revealed the new look for Jill because Jill carried the same facial design all the way through Resident Evil 5 Gold. And then she looked different. And then you get over it. And then now Jill looks like her, right? So after playing through the game, that feeling goes away. But they could have said the same thing about Jill Valentine.
Hmm.
I still believe nobody played as Chris in Resident Evil 1.
That's because Chris in Resident Evil 1 was definitively a
Weaker.
really bad time your first time through. You
We
have
got
less
so
inventory.
distracted, Gene. I just looked on my other monitor and this graph is still looking at us.
Oh yeah.
Ah,
But
oh
yeah,
yeah,
if
that.
you played that game, if your very first introduction to Resident Evil 1 was Chris, you would just have a bad time. Just
Oh
because
yeah.
you have less backpack space and
You can't pick locks.
yeah, you would just be stumbling around getting beat up. It would be like playing Elden Ring at this point.
You don't even have Barry making the game comedy. Oh
Yeah.
man. Okay, so on this chart, I want to just go through the categories where the female motivation score is significantly higher than the male. Then you can do the same for the males. Completion, fantasy, story, discovery, and design elements are
Hmm.
all categories where it is more than 8% difference.
Hmm.
All right. Females are more motivated by those things, regardless of hardcore, casual, midcore.
Yeah. And the most striking one to me was design, which kind of correlates to what I was saying before, where
20% difference, Gene. 20%, 71 to 51.
right. And for people that don't know, design in this case is the ability to customize and create your character. Um, and so this kind of goes what I was saying before. If you are locked into a man character, a Master Chief, your apparently your motivation as a female would to play this game would drop because you don't have that design and customability that you're looking for.
You're stuck being Master Chief.
Yeah. Or a guy that looks like Master Chief because and when you're playing multiplayer, you're just a generic Spartan Space Marine. You're not the Master Chief.
Yeah. Like the reason that I love Super Mario Brothers 2 in North America more than 3 is because in 3 I'm stuck being Mario and in 2 I can be Princess Toadstool.
Yes. But yeah, that so that I don't know. Like I said, this just seems to me that if a female gamer values design, they are dissuaded from some of these competitive games that are very specified character.
Mhm. Yeah. So the next chart, it basically just says if you're a casual gamer, you score low on every motivation regardless of gender,
Right.
right?
Which
So
was which was kind of what I was thinking. Like if you're saying you're a casual gamer because you go to Dave and Buster's twice a year, of course you don't care about any of that.
I mean, to be fair, maybe they buy one video game every year like there's one franchise that brings them into the community of people who game. But when the questions are general about how games work, you're not interested. Because I just want to catch Pikachu and do Thunder Shock to everything. You know,
Right.
something like that. Which that's cool.
Yeah.
I think if you know what you like and you can experience it at regular intervals and you can add that to your day, that's awesome. That's the superpower of video games. That brings us to the ascent, where we elevate the topic. So, in this conversation, we have talked about hardcore, midcore, and casual gaming. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The research says a lot of things about gender and motivations, and we can talk all day about escape and coping, and if we should play, and how we grow, and what's the healthiest way to live our day. But when everything is over and we've logged out and the game is no longer being played, if we feel like it lifted us up and took our minds somewhere where we wanted to go, that adds something to our day, whether it's a happy experience, a goal, a drive, a metaphorical lesson, or even connections with other real people who wanted to have the same kind of experience with us. That is powerful, and that is why we should all be able to enjoy playing video games, no matter how invested we are in the overall industry. All right, let's go on the return so we can get back to our everyday lives. Gene, I don't know if you've noticed in the video, but I keep almost knocking my hat over using the back because the back of my computer chair is hitting the.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big brimmed wizard hat. So I think we need to end the episode before I lose my hat. So Gene, what do you think you're going to take with you from this conversation tonight?
I'm thinking casual gamers just don't like games.
Oh man, Gene, that's such a gross generalization. They
No, I
like
mean, like,
what they
if a casual
like.
gamer doesn't care about the community of the game, or the story, or the discovery, or any of it, like, well, you're
What
just
if
playing
they
games to
don't
kill
like
time.
doing online questionnaires?
So they just answer everything negatively out of spite.
I've done that recently. If I don't think the questions are designed well, then I'll just be like neutral, 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 very disappointed. Neutral, 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 neutral. You have to earn my positive regard in
All
a
right.
survey.
I guess
This
I
isn't
could
no
work with
therapy
that.
session. There's no unconditional positive regard here. Oh man. So I think that I'm going to take with me that ultimately we like to talk about these things and create our little labels and categories so that we can pretend we know what we're talking about. And it works for a research report, but when it comes to actually experiencing it, I'm very hesitant to say that people walking around saying you're a hardcore gamer are saying that as a supportive, descriptive way to say what they see you doing. Like, I feel like if you are the kind of person who's looking to identify that in people, it's probably not in a nice way. And
Yeah.
that is definitely not what Quantic Foundry is trying to do. You know, I've talked to Nick a few times. He was on the show, and his research has inspired me. So I understand that they are using labels that are common terminology for people who are trying to scientifically talk about video games. I'm just worried that the people who scientifically talk about video games are just using it as a way to find the exact right label to make it sound like a bad thing.
Hmm.
And I would love to sit down and talk with them about what they think about Resident Evil 4 coming out, or Silent Hill 2, or what their last time that they played Overwatch 2 was like. And the researchers that I get along with and collaborate with, we have those conversations. I just wish it was a requirement. Like, if you're going to talk about this stuff, bring some of that with you too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in other fields you can't just fake it. Like if you're an oceanographer, you have to experience the ocean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that a lot of people who do research on how cocaine works hopefully are not doing cocaine.
Well, I believe the early ones definitely were.
Oh, they
Those.
definitely were. Yeah. Again, I've talked about this story on the show, but Sigmund Freud had a guest lecture somewhere when he was still alive and said it was such a lively engagement, no doubt because of the cocaine I took right before stepping on stage. And that was
Right.
like that's such a historical white privilege kind of thing to say, isn't it? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, if this is all sounding fun to you and you would like some cool people to play with, check out AIE at aie-guild.org. And I have one final quest for everyone to take with them in their week. Play your games in the best way you can to enjoy them, casual, mid, or hardcore. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that you always continue the journey.
Yeah. Make sure you actually enjoy the game.
See you next week. So, what kind of gamer are you, Gene?
I'm gonna still say
It doesn't matter what kind of gamer you are.